In September of 2016, I changed my profile picture to this picture. And you can see the date on this, right? I was 30. I had just really started this like online creator side of the business. I had had a business for like 6 or 7 years at this point, but I was really starting to like put content on the internet. And this was the first conference I went to and got these headshots done. And I loved them so much. So I changed my profile picture to this picture. And minutes later, and you can see the timestamps here, minutes later, I get this message basically telling me that if I want to take care of my fine lines and wrinkles, I should check out Rodan & Fields right after I posted a picture of myself where I was like smiling and squinting and I had like regular lines. I said, girl, why would you send me this message? That was not very nice. And she went on about her day, right? Probably sending 12 other people the same message. And still to this day, I get messages constantly. I get added to Facebook groups or I get like actual messages from people who are like, hey girl, I have this new exciting thing. Hey girl. And it's from people I haven't talked to in 20 years. And they're wanting to sell me their new toothpaste. You know? And now at this phase of life, I'm much more aggressive with my responses. I'm usually like, no, and you're selling a bunch of garbage. But most people don't even see that they're being sold to or they're about to be sold to or that someone is about to use tactics on them that make them want to join the same program or whatever. But why is this happening? Why is this so common? Like, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where all of our friends from high school are now selling MLMs? Why are MLMs so prevalent when they actually don't work and we know they don't work? Why does it seem to be a certain group of people who usually push them and who are usually in them? How did they start and infiltrate the lives of like suburbia, small towns, and stay-at-home moms? And why is there always a Bible verse attached? I actually got sucked in by an MLM once. Yeah. And I've actually been a member of several MLMs before I got to the point where I was like, these are predatory companies, which we'll talk about in a minute. But these are predatory companies. I don't want anything to do with them. But I had the exact same experience that they're using and doing with so many other people to recruit people into these things. So in 2010, I had my first baby. And so yes, he is almost 15. Like what? Anyway, I had my first baby and I was young and I'd only been in corporate like a couple years and I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like I really, really wanted to stay home with him. But I was also willing to work from home, like totally willing to do that. And that's actually what I've done forever. But as I was like trying to find ways to quit my job so that I could stay home, I ended up being sucked in at a 31 party. So like the 31 bags, I probably still have some. I probably should have went and tried to find them. But the 31 bags that you could like monogram your name on them or whatever. Yeah, I got sucked in at one of those parties. And it was like $99 to join the thing. And you can make millions of dollars. And so I signed up. And to be quite transparent, I absolutely made money in my first month. If I remember correctly, I made right at $700 in my first month. And I honestly was like, I am onto something here. But what I very quickly realized, and I only sold it basically for that first month, was that I live in a small town. At the time, yes, Facebook was a thing. People were starting to use it, but it wasn't the thing it is now. And I literally had to bug the snot out of my friends and family to make that $700. I had to have, I think I had like 3 parties that month. And I bugged like these, my family, my husband's family, like my friends to come and buy things that they didn't friggin' want. They didn't want these things. But when you get somebody in a party, they're like, oh yeah, I have to buy something, right? Because that's how this kind of shit works. And I made a realization very quickly that like, that was not what I wanted to do. And so I got out, but I have seen the insides of these things on multiple instances. And actually not long ago, I shared this thread on Threads where I was like, hey, 31 bags is shutting down. Yay. I actually was in this one and I'm glad that MLMs are kind of going out. And a guy commented and was like, if you had to bug your friends and family, you weren't doing it right. Girl, sit down and listen to this video because somebody told you to say that to me on the internet. And you just repeated it like a freaking puppet. Okay, so before we can get to the how did we get here? Why do stay-at-home moms sell these things? Why is it always the same people? How did we get to the point where MLMs were so friggin' prevalent? Let's talk about MLMs. Let's talk about how we got here. So if you don't know what an MLM is, it stands for multi-level marketing company, okay? And it essentially has this structure where there's people at the top and they recruit people, and then those people recruit people, and the money goes in an upward trajectory, right? So the people on the bottom, when they sell $100 worth of stuff, the people in the next level get a little bit of that. The people above them get a little more of that. The people above them get a little more of that. And so the money flows up and the downline flows down. And we're going to talk about Amway and a couple others here in a second. But first, actual MLM was a company called Nutrilite. It was a vitamin and supplement company founded in 1934. And it basically created this structure where there was a product because they had to have a product to not be illegal. And we'll get into that in a second. But there was a product. But you really made your money by recruiting people to sell that product, who then recruited people to sell the product. And you positioned it as starting your own business. Nutrilite was the first company to really develop that structure, to really say, okay, this is what this looks like. You're going to go out, you're going to sell this product, but more importantly than that, you're going to recruit people to sell this product. And you're going to do that by telling them that they're starting their own business. They're being independent. They're doing the things. So the MLM structure we have today literally started in 1934. Then you have Miss Brownie Wise over here organizing Tupperware parties in the 40s. So women were flocking to other women's houses to have these women's nights out. And you can imagine in the 40s, that was quite the deal, right? They probably weren't allowed to have a women's night out very often. And so they were running to each other's houses and having Tupperware parties. And then it just spread like wildfire because more than anything, they likely were craving community with the other moms and the other women in their neighborhoods or whatever. And Miss Brownie Wise, she hit on a good thing when it comes to marketing, and she understood what she had, and she started this wave of Tupperware parties. And I think that when we think about MLM parties, all of us immediately think about Tupperware parties. I've never actually been to a Tupperware party. I don't think I'm old enough to have gone to a Tupperware party. I am sure they were still a thing in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, but I think in my small town, they had either come and gone, I don't know, or they weren't really as big of a thing as they were in other places. So I've never actually been to a Tupperware party. I have used Tupperware. Oh, wait. Actually, we have a Tupperware bowl that's probably dirty right now, but I'll try and get some footage of it and overlay it here, put a picture, whatever. But we have a Tupperware bowl that was my husband's grandmother's bowl that she bought at a Tupperware party, probably in the 50s or 60s. And this sucker is our popcorn bowl. It has fed a lot of pieces of popcorn throughout the years. And it is well used, but it is probably close to 100 years old and still kicking. So not bad products, just a bad business model. And actually, as of last year, you could buy Tupperware at Target now. So I don't think they're actually in the MLM business anymore, but Tupperware definitely did start this whole home party scenario. And then Amway came onto the scene. And this one took off like wildfire. And Amway is still a thing to this day. For some reason in my brain, I thought that it was gone, but it wasn't. It is not. It is still a thing. And basically they sell cleaning products. And when they started in 1979, they sold one cleaning product, but then you made your money because you went and recruited other people to sell that cleaning product. And the more people you recruited, the more people who sold the cleaning product, the more money you made, right? And this is actually where we have our legal separation of a pyramid scheme and an MLM. What's illegal versus what's legal. In 1979, the FTC went up against Amway, and basically Amway skated by being classified as an MLM, not a pyramid scheme, because they had a product to sell. So it drew this really freaking thin line. in the FTC's eyes of what is a pyramid scheme versus what an MLM is. Basically, to show you the difference, a pyramid scheme would literally be a scheme where there was no product involved. So the person at the top recruits 5 other people, they all pay in money, and then those 5 people recruit other people who pay in money, and then as the money is getting paid in, it is flowing up to that person at the top, right? Which is exactly what an MLM does. They just put a product in as proxy. So in 1979, the FTC basically created this super thin line to be able to distinguish between MLMs and pyramid schemes. And that, my dears, is why when you call out an MLMer and you're like, this is a freaking pyramid scheme, they're like, no, pyramid schemes are illegal, because they've been coached to say that because pyramid schemes are illegal, but MLMs are basically pyramid schemes with a thin line that keeps them legal. And MLMs dance on that line constantly. So the real line here is that if the majority of the money is made by recruiting, it's technically a pyramid scheme. But that's also very hard to prove, right? So MLMs get away with saying, oh no, we make our money with our products, when in reality, anybody who's ever been in an MLM knows that recruiting people is how you actually make the money. On the FTC's website, there's actually a whole page that's basically like, MLMs are often pyramid schemes. Before joining one, here's some things you should know. And then it goes on to say the difference in an MLM, how they work, and a pyramid scheme. So here on the FTC website, it says, if the MLM is not a pyramid scheme, it will pay you based on your sales to retail customers without having to recruit new distributors. And I can tell you, I've been on the inside of several MLMs. They all pay you more to recruit distributors. And then it even goes on to say most people who join legitimate MLMs make little or no money. Some of them lose money. So, just saying. And then it goes on to talk about pyramid schemes and how they're scams, and they look remarkably like MLM businesses, but you'll be encouraged or required to buy a certain amount of product at regular intervals, even if you already have more inventory than you can use. And again, this is basically every MLM I've ever seen. But there's obviously a thin line enough there to where they're not getting taken down by the FTC. So after all of this stuff with Amway, somebody was like, okay, let's fuck around and find out with the airplane game. The airplane game is basically this pyramid scheme that you go to these meetings, which is already red flag number 1. But you go to these meetings and they're structured in a way where there's a pilot or a captain. I don't remember what they call it. Pilot or a captain. And then that pilot or captain recruits crew members, and those crew members recruit other crew members, and everybody just pays money to be part of it. And as the pilot makes a certain amount of money, whatever is decided with the airplane game that they're playing at the time, then he leaves, and the two underneath him split off and become pilots so that they make the money that people bring in. So essentially it is a legit pyramid scheme. There is no product. You're literally paying money to just pretend you're on an airplane. And when you get to be pilot, you make $14,000. It's strange. The airplane game was a big thing in the 80s, and it was eventually shut down state by state in its heyday, but versions of it still pop up today. There are still people doing this freaking airplane game because they're so desperate for money, which is what all of these things play on, okay? But then after the airplane game, in the 80s and 90s is when MLMs really figured out that their target market was none other than stay-at-home moms. I mean, think about it. It was perfect, right? Stay-at-home moms need extra money usually, right? Because it's very hard, especially now, to live on one income as a family of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, right? So they generally need extra income. Then they're usually craving community, and they want to be able to work whenever they can because they have little kids running around. So it's the perfect person for MLMs to start targeting. Because here's the deal. When you need to make extra money, a lot of times you will do things you normally wouldn't do, or you will believe things you normally wouldn't believe, and you'll try things that maybe don't make a lot of sense. This is why the lottery is mostly played by lower middle class and below, because they need money so bad that they're willing to do things that they likely know probably won't ever get them to where they want to be, but they're willing to try it. A lot of these stay-at-home moms that they started targeting were also part of like religious groups where they believed that they had to stay home. And so they were having to stay home, but their family needed money, but they craved that like work experience or that like work culture. And so when you infiltrate someone's mind with like religiously based on what you believe, you should probably do this thing. I mean, it's going to work. It's actually how religions work as a whole. So now they have the perfect group of people. Women who are desperate to make money, who are looking to belong somewhere. And because of those things, these MLMs can infiltrate their brains with language and with scripts and with things to make them kind of fulfill this thing for them. With Tupperware parties setting the scene, and then tons of new MLM companies coming on the scene in like the 90s and early 2000s, it was a stay-at-home mom's wildest dreams. Or in my case, it was the moms who were working probably a full-time or part-time job, but it wasn't enough. So the allure of being able to quit that job or being able to go full-time on this thing was enough to make them want to do it. I went to a crap ton of parties with my mother in the early 2000s because it seemed like everybody she worked with had started some kind of MLM along the way. So it was like Pampered Chef, Mary Kay, all of these companies were doing all of these house parties all the time. I feel as if in my high school years and early college years, I was always at an MLM party of some sort. And I was always trying to be recruited. And I was always like, hell no, go away. But then with the advancement of social media, it made this even freaking easier, right? So now we weren't even having to have home parties. We could do a party online. We could do a party in a more like streamlined online, shop at your own time kind of way. Not only that, but it was much easier to recruit people, much easier to infiltrate people that you normally wouldn't have a connection with. So in the 90s and 2000s, and before that even, when people were wanting to recruit people, they had to physically know them. They had to physically be able to get in touch with them. They had to be able to be like, hey, come to my house for a party. And those people show up to the party and then be like, hey, you should sell this thing too. You would be great at it. And then those people would sell things and then they would have a party and then they would be like, oh, you should sell these things. You'd be great at it. But it had to be physically in person. Now, with the advancement of social media, it took one, hey girl message to recruit somebody. It took one, hey, your face is looking a little extra wrinkly, to recruit somebody. It took one message from a Beachbody coach when you were 6 weeks postpartum to say, hey, you want to lose that baby weight? I've got just the thing for you. And we all know the people have loads of audacity when you can hide it behind a keyboard. Like people are going to say way more things when they can type it than they would if they had to verbally say it. And with the advancement of social media, these things could spread way quicker and could infiltrate areas that they normally couldn't infiltrate, right? So my small town, for the longest time, probably until the last decade, so probably until like 2015, we were drastically behind in a lot of things. Now we still are. Don't get me wrong. We still are behind in a lot of things, evidenced by the fact that our local businesses don't do social media. They advertise in the newspaper, right? So we are still behind in a lot of things, but up until like 2015, we were like really behind in all areas. So by the time like fashion got here, it was already basically over in the other places. And I have a ton of good examples of this because I lived in my small town and drove about 35, 40 minutes away to my college. And in that college town, right, it was like a melting pot of people who were coming in from bigger cities and like whatever else. And so I would see fashion happen on campus months before it would ever be a thing here. And I also remember a time when I was either in college or just out of college and Crocs were like in their first heyday. And it was when those like Mary Jane Crocs, were like a big thing. And I remember them coming to the county and like everybody was wearing them, right? And I remember buying them and being so excited. And then I remember my sister-in-law who lived on the coast. So not in a small town, kind of in a bigger area, definitely in a different place, not as secluded as I was, being like, oh yeah, we had those like months ago And now they're kind of out. It's like, the hell? They were just here. We just got them. So when it comes to MLMs, areas like mine were not able to be infiltrated in a personal basis the same way that like big cities could. But now with the advancement of social media and online parties and all the things that go along with that, small towns could get infiltrated even better than ever before. What also people aren't thinking is when you're recruiting everybody from your small town and whatever, and everybody in the small town starts selling the stuff, then basically there's no money to be had by anybody because the small town only has so many people interested in buying the thing. Here and also in other places, because I do know that because I was on the internet and I was designing blogs and I did a lot of blogs for like Beachbody coaches. But in the early 2010s, Rodan and Fields and Beachbody were rampant everywhere. Now, there were other ones too, but those two were the ones that were like everybody selling Rodan and Fields and Beachbody. And people were flocking to Facebook to show their results and show their workouts and recruit other people. And I actually personally know several Beachbody coaches who were making 6 figures or close to 6 figures who were literally in the 1% of these companies. And I know they were in the 1% because 99% of people who join MLMs actually lose money. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I did know some people who are pretty successful at Beachbody. Now, are they all doing it now? No. Is Beachbody even still an MLM? No. So, do with that what you will. I do think that people are starting to see through these a little bit more, but they're still so rampant and there's constantly new ones popping up everywhere. I just saw a post and I wish I would have screenshotted it because I can't find it again. I don't know if the girl blocked me or if she just like hid me from the post because I called her ass out. But I saw a post just the other day in my local Facebook group that was like, looking for 3 to 4 people who want to join such and such accounting firm. Actually, it didn't say the accounting firm, who want to join my accounting firm and make X, Y, and Z dollars with 5 hours a week and amazing pay. And when I Googled the exact verbiage, like literally copied it and pasted it into Google, was like, what company is using this right now? I found the exact company, and it's an MLM that instead of a product, these people are providing a service. So I commented and I was like, this is a scam. Here's the link to the place. Please don't do this. Because here's the thing. I live in a really small town where the people who are going to jump on things like that are financially scared. They are financially not in a good place. And they're going to get taken for more than what they started with, And so if I can be like, hey, don't do this. This is a scam. I feel like I've done a little bit of my work for the day. And by the way, if a post ever is touting the benefits of a product or, really saying how little you'll have to work and throwing out all of these like benefits, but not telling you the name of the company, it is an MLM. You are not going to make money. Please run. Oh my gosh. I just had a flashback. So back in 2013, 2014, I lost a bunch of weight. So I had my second son and we were going to Hawaii when he was about 14 months old. And I was like, I will look good in a bikini. And I did, by the way. But I was like, I will look good in a bikini. So I was going to the gym all the time and I was like working out, like crazy. And this girl came up to me at the gym one day because she overheard me saying that I have migraines. And by the way, I know the triggers for my migraines, and as long as I avoid my triggers, I'm pretty good. I haven't had a migraine in a year at this point, and so I don't really need anything to manage my migraines, but I was talking to somebody else who also had migraines, and I assume she overheard that conversation. And she comes up to me and she's like, you should buy my protein shake. I don't remember the name of this company, but it was a big thing about that time. But she was like, you should buy these protein shakes. They help me with my migraines. No, they would actually probably cause my migraines because stevia is one of the causes of my migraines. So no, girl, no. She got so mad at me for saying no to her that she proceeded to bully me at the gym and in grocery stores when she saw me for years. Little did she know that she picked on the wrong person because I embarrassed her ass in the grocery store one time. It's also super interesting to me that a lot of these MLMs have like a Christian tie. Whether it's like their messaging, their entire business model, or their founders, there's usually this like Christian tie. And as someone who lives in the very conservative Christian South, I know why this is. I know that a lot of evangelical groups promote that the women should not work, that they should be homemakers and all the things. Hello, Harrison Butker, good example. And these evangelicals promote this lifestyle for women, but we can't afford that, right? Like most families are not going to be able to afford the ability to not work. So what these MLMs will do is use Christian marketing and religious wording in their marketing, in their messaging, the people that they recruit to talk about like what a blessing it is and how it's God's plan and this is a Christian sisterhood, to basically say, hey, we know that you want to stay at home because we think that's what our religious text tells us. And here's a way to do that. It gives them credibility and a built-in community while pulling on pieces of their brain that make them feel like they're sinning if they don't stay at home. I mean, LuLaRoe was founded by Mormon founders. 31 bags, literally the name, it comes from Proverbs 31. And so many of these companies use the religious language to do exactly that. But here's the thing. MLMs are terrible. MLMs are bad. Like we've talked about this a little bit this far, but MLMs are pyramid schemes. They just are. If you look at the FTC website where it defines pyramid schemes, MLMs are pyramid schemes. They're just legally able to get away with it. And some of them aren't, by the way. There have been tons of MLMs shut down or that have had to restructure because the FTC is like, you're dancing a little too far on the pyramid scheme of this line, right? But they're pyramid schemes. Because look, this is the structure of an MLM. The people at the top are going to sell these products and tout these products and talk about how awesome they are, and they're going to recruit people underneath them to sell these products. They make money now, the people at the top now make money based on any products they sell, but also any products the people underneath them sell forever. So when person B recruits person F underneath them, and person F recruits person S underneath them, and person S sells $100 worth of stuff, and person F sells $100 worth of stuff, all of the money is being funneled up to person A, who recruited the top line of these people. It's honestly just the airplane game with products. And in my opinion, I actually don't think that the people who are at the tops of these pyramids are aware that they're even doing what they're doing until later on. So I don't think that like Sarah over here, who was in the top 1% of Beachbody, knew that she was being predatory and she was using language to play on people's financial hardship and that most of those people underneath her would not make money. I don't think she knew that and inherently was doing it maliciously. I think she was just as much of a victim, but she was an early adapter and an early victim. So she had more benefit from it than person S all the way down the line. And like, it is an actual thing that 99% of people who join MLMs actually lose money. They lose it. They don't make it because it's really only that top 1% that are going to make money. Because just with anything else, being an early adopter, being an early adapter, being early into the game is going to cause you to sit higher up than the people who come in later. People come in later have less benefit than the people who come in early. So the top 1% is going to make the money. The 99% underneath them are not. And when it comes to like losing money, these people are being told that number one, they have to buy like a starter kit, right? Like that's lost money, number one. Number two, they generally are having to pay to access like a website within the MLM, or they are having to pay for their own website to promote their MLM. They're having to actually do marketing, you know, in some way, may have to pay for something, may not, right? But then most MLMs are going to require that you sell a certain number of things to keep your status or to keep, you know, your like level of selling or to just stay part of the program or the MLM. So when you have a month where, oh my gosh, I didn't sell $2,000 worth of product because that's the level I'm at right now, you have to then spend that $2,000 or lose your access. But do you know who does know all of this? Who knows that the language that they're using, that the like Christian angle, that the extra money angle, that the go after stay-at-home moms and people who are financially in a bad place angle works? Do you know who does know those things and who also knows that most people who join the company won't make any money, but they will make money? The founders, the creators, they know this. They have studied MLM structures. They know the language that needs to be used to get somebody in the door. They know all of this. They are purposefully creating a program, a product, a structure that is going to be predatory to people, and they know that. So there's a ton of like moms, stay-at-home moms, working moms, people who are trying to get out of a financial situation who invest maybe sometimes thousands. Like LuLaRoe, to buy into LuLaRoe, I think the minimum was like $5,000 because you had to buy inventory, which was weird, but whatever. So sometimes these people are spending thousands of dollars to invest. And when it doesn't work, the language is, you just didn't work hard enough. Well, you should have tried harder. Just like that guy on my thread who was like, if you were bugging your friends and family, you weren't doing it right. Girl, okay. These MLMs teach their recruits to go after people who they see saying they're struggling financially, or to use language that's going to pull those people in. So when that girl just recently posted in that Facebook group in my small town, that is a very low income town, and was like, you can work 5 hours a week and make thousands of dollars, she may not have known that the language she was using was purposefully predatory, but they did. The people who gave it to her absolutely did. This article on Yahoo has several stories from ex-MLM people, and they're just like telling like how they got hoodooed into this. And this one says, my recruiter told me she made $400 at the party I was at. I later learned she only made 25% of that because, you know, you're not making the entire cost of what people spent. I was told that if I could get 2 people under me, I would make $400 to $500 a month. Then I was told I needed 4 people instead of 2. Then I was $2,000 in debt with nothing to show for it. After that, I deleted them all and changed my phone number. That is most people's stories with MLMs. What's really interesting is I do find that a lot of people fall for them over and over and over and over again. There is a girl in my local area who has sold probably every MLM there is. And when a new one pops up, she's going to sell it. When MRRs popped up, which are basically just a digital MLM, and if you don't know what MRRs are, I will post a link to a video here. But when they popped up, she was the first one to jump on them. She was a LuLaRoe seller. She was a this seller. She was a that seller, because they're already programmed to believe that these things are going to work. And even when they don't work, they were programmed to believe that it was their fault. So they're going to keep falling for them and keep doing them. At the risk of sounding extremist, MLMs are very culty. They love bomb, and they use language to purposely pull certain members in. Because here's the thing, cults know that they can't get everybody. There are some people that a cult can't get a hold of. Like, I don't want to say that you couldn't get a hold of me with a cult, but I could pretty much guarantee that I'd see through the bullshit of most cults, right? But there are certain people in certain stages of life. Like in certain stages of life, I probably would have been more susceptible to a cult. There are people that are more susceptible, that are more vulnerable, right? That these MLMs play on just like a cult would. They love bomb them. They get them excited. They use all of these tactics. And then when they leave, they're shunned. They're shamed. They're told that it was their fault. I mean, just look at this. This is weird.
I know you guys watch me or your upline or whoever you look up to, and you're like, damn, I wish I could have her life. I wish I could make her money. I wish I could travel as much as she does. I wish I had her team. I wish I was SED. I wish I was MDC. You can be. But what's holding you back is that you're wishing and hoping instead of acting and doing, taking action. Why did you give up? Ask yourselves. Why did you give up? Write down 10 reasons why you gave up. Did someone tell you you weren't good enough? Did you just get impatient? You wanted quick results and you didn't get them? Or maybe you did get results, but then when it got a little rougher, you now have a team that you have to lead. You got lazy. Maybe you didn't establish the correct habits, the right habits. You know, this business is about habits, and having a good life is about habits. It's about the small things we do every single day. And guys, what I always say is if you are successful in network marketing, you are a better person.
When a mom is desperate to stay home with her babies, because I was there, right? When A working mom is desperate to make a little extra money because her husband went and gambled away $2,000 at the casino, when a mom who is in an abusive relationship and doesn't know how she's going to make money to get out, when a Christian woman is told that she should stay at home, that that's the most biblical thing, and if she doesn't do that, she feels like she's not being biblical. When these people are told that they can make this money, that look at version of you over here that now is swimming in cash, or look at this thing, or oh my gosh, it's going to be so easy, they are going to jump on it with both feet. But here's the hope. Here's the hope. Here's where I think I see the silver lining, and where I think that this is all going. So first of all, silver lining. There are a number of people, it generally does end up being those 1% of people who make money in an MLM, but those people, even when they leave the MLM, they generally now have a sense for business and entrepreneurship, and usually will go out and start their own thing. I've seen this happen over and over and over again. These people come from an MLM that either crashes or burns or like whatever the scenario is, but then they use those skills that they gained, marketing, language, product development, like whatever, to go start their own thing. So silver lining is that for some people, this is their pathway into entrepreneurship, and I am here for an entrepreneurial queen, right? Now, that's basically the only silver lining to the MLMs, but the silver lining to the situation is I do think more and more people are waking up to this being a thing. Now, there are always just going to be people who are willing to believe whatever. They will be pulled into every scam. They believe every cult-like piece of language. And they're probably the same people who are posting untrue articles on their Facebook page and being like, see what I tell you? And, that kind of stuff. There will always be those people. But for the most part, I think a lot of people are waking up. There are entire YouTube channels and podcasts for anti-MLM content. There are entire websites. There's an entire website called pinktruth.com that is literally just horror stories from Mary Kay. There are entire Reddit threads. There are videos like this that are hopefully informative to people and show them what's up and where they're getting stuck and whatever. But also, people have joined these things in more mass in the last 20 years or so because of social media and all of the stuff that goes along with it. And they've been let down. And so they're not going to be as likely to join one again. And some states are cracking down on MLMs. Some states are creating laws that make that line between a pyramid scheme and an MLM even thicker. So it's much easier to say, hey, you can't do this. Just like with anything else where people believe something that isn't true or they're in a cult-like community, you're probably not going to talk them into not believing this thing. But if you can catch them in the beginning, if you can speak out about them, if you can tell people when they're seeing a scam, then it might stop somebody from going down a rabbit hole and losing a shit ton of money. Well, like I've already said in this video several times, I am the first one to be like, this is a scam. Don't do this. This is stupid. Here's an article that shows you what a scam this is. But when I first started seeing the MRR market move into my small town, I called that shit out on every post I saw. This is MRR. This is why it's bad. Here's why you shouldn't do it. Please don't do this. Because MRR goes a whole nother level and tries to make these people experts in something they're not experts in, which all MLMs probably do a little bit because, you probably weren't a makeup artist when you started selling Mary Kay. You probably weren't a nutritionist when you started pushing that protein shake, but this was above and beyond that. And I'm willing to call it out. If you've ever been in an MLM or have an experience or want to share a story, I'd love to hear it in the comments below because I know y'all have them. I do. We all have these stories. We all have something. And don't be embarrassed. Again, I was in an MLM. I have been in the inside of several MLMs, even though I wasn't selling them. I was just buying the products. I know what this looks like. I do not judge you. Okay? We listen and we don't judge. So share your stories below. And if you liked this video, make sure you hit subscribe because I have a ton more deep dives and fun videos that we're going to do in the future. And if this is the kind of content you like, this is the place for you because it's going to be fun. Bye, y'all.